Hello and welcome to episode 12 of the Good Game Roundtable podcast. I'm Lin Jie Kong, and today on the show, someone very special. Without this person, none of this would be possible. This podcast certainly wouldn't exist, and I probably wouldn't be working in television. Yes, it's the Queen, the Empress, Mother Superior, the one who created it all and gave birth to Good Game, the incredible Janet Carr.
Oh, Lynn.
Hello, Janet. How are you?
Hi, Lynn. I'm very well. Thank you very much.
First of all, congrats on the MCV Pacific Pillar of the Industry Award, which you won last night.
I did, and I am extremely humbled to get that award. Like, it was really lovely. I have to tell you one. Can I tell you one quick little story?
Yeah, tell me one.
The other pillars who were in the room, they got us together for a photo, and there was 4 other pillars in the room and me, and they're all these very eminent men, but they're all like a foot shorter than me. So I just wasn't quite sure what to do in the photo, whether to stand up straight or whether to try and bend my knees a bit. But
No.
I felt like the pillar.
You should not have to do a Nicole Kidman with Tom Cruise. Like, you should be, you should feel free to be yourself.
Tall and proud.
And tall and proud, just be tall and proud. I'm extremely excited about this. I think I've been talking about how excited I'm about this podcast for about a week now, because I feel like this is my moment to be James Lipton and Michael Parkinson and, to hold a one-on-one interview. So it's 2016. Good Game has been on the air for 10 years. Did you think that you would get to this stage when you first started the show?
Yes.
Yes, definitely.
No. Honestly, I did always believe that once we started making it, because there really wasn't another television program about gaming, and I knew, because I was one and I was playing a lot of games online, that there were thousands of us, that we would have enough of an audience to justify a program about video games on the ABC. So I was not unsurprised that we did get a second series, and then that we got a third series. I guess that now we're in our 10th year. That has kind of moved the show from being one of those little sort of, start-up, that's where the young people work, to a show that's got real longevity.
Well, it has legacy, right? I mean, that's where legacy starts.
Absolutely, that's where legacy starts. I mean, many great shows that people remember on the ABC never made it to 10 years.
Yeah. I haven't even been working for 10 years. Like, I haven't been in full-time work for 10 years. So the idea that you would be working on something for 10 years and something that you created, is this the longest you've worked on a particular show or program?
It is the longest I've worked on one show. My career has been sort of marked by significant contributions to shows. Like, I like to stick around. I like to, I was 7 years with Late Line, 4 years with Radio National. I would have been a lot longer in the drama department working on GP, but I had a baby. I worked for many, many years in the children's department as well, on Bananas in Pyjamas and Video and those kind of shows. So I do like that. I like working in teams where we actually all get to know each other very well. I like that sort of, feeling of a family, a team that becomes a family, and you can trust people and you know what people like to do and where their strengths are. And so that is how I think I work to my best. I mean, 10 years is a long time. I should think about leaving.
No, never. What would the ABC do? Of course, I'll bring this up a little bit later, because I'd love to talk about the progression that you've seen across the 10 years, right? Like, as we said, 10 years is a long time. But before we hit that, I want to know all about your childhood. Where did you grow up? And what were the games that you played as a kid, if you played games as a kid?
I played a lot of games as a kid. My family were hardcore gamers before the era of video games. So board games, card games, you name it. And we were vicious and mean to each other, all in a loving and family way. So one of the games that we used to play a lot in card games was a game called Hearts, and it's quite popular in Australia as well. And, you could absolutely go for it with your family, and it was perfectly acceptable to do that, to the point where if we had visitors come and play with us, people would be like, oh, this what's wrong with you? Like, you're all dysfunctional. But we thought that was how you played games, and we loved it.
I don't think it's proper to play games without being competitive. That's why you play games.
Exactly. Competitive is the word. Yeah. And we were, and you celebrated the wins and you took the losses and you gave a lot of banter. And that sort of really symbolised my family. As far as video games are concerned, I really fell in love with one particular game in 1984, which was on the Game & Watch console, and it was a little score attack game called Parachute. All you had to do was move the little guy on a raft and catch parachutes that were falling out of a plane, and you know how they had that kind of fixed print on the screen, and you really only had to move it backwards and forwards. But what was significant about that game was that my mum was extremely ill, dying in fact, and we used to play this game and swap it between us. And so now when I think back on those last weeks of her life, rather than have that kind of intense sorrow, of course I miss her and I have intense sorrow about the loss of her, that memory is also punctuated by this hilarity surrounding this one particular game. And that was when I really kind of, my transition to being at the point where even a simple game like Parachute could transcend sort of other entertainment experiences. And so I'm extremely fond of that game and always have been. And then I just never put games away. After that, I've just been a gamer forever.
And just a lifelong love affair with gaming.
Yes, and television, actually, and television. So back at school, and I went to, I grew up in North London. I went to the local kind of grammar school, and my careers advisor, she said, what do you want to do? And I said, I want to go and work for the BBC. I want to work in television. She's like, forget it, Janet. They only take Oxford or Cambridge. You're not smart enough. Go and be a teacher. So, being a good girl, I took her advice, went and did an education degree, put a backpack on at the end of that, didn't want to go straight into teaching. I love teaching, and I was pretty good at it, I think, back then, but put a backpack on with giving myself a year to go and explore the world before I would then go back and start teaching, and I came out to Australia, and the rest is history.
The rest is history, and now you're happily been in Australia since then. I want to take you back to that period when you said the career advisor basically said to you, you shouldn't even think about television. Mm-hmm. It's not even in the future for you. At that point in time, did you ever question it? Did you ever think, well, why? Why was this the case?
This is a while ago now, Lynn, and I don't actually think it was necessarily bad advice back then. I mean, the BBC was held up as this kind of hallowed institution, and television, especially back in England, was this kind of, it was almost like a godlike status, like it was to be on the television was just for the very, very, very elite. And, I was one of the masses and I loved it and I watched it and I bought into everything. I've got a Blue Peter badge, I made the Christmas decorations, you name it. I was in it. Every single TV show, loved them. Dallas. Oh. So, I kind of took it on the chin, really. So when I got to Australia with my backpack on and, did a few sort of jobs, got back to Sydney and went into the friend that I was travelling with had gone to the snow. She had a few weeks extra. She said, Janet, do you mind, I'm going to go skiing. Do you mind delaying our trip back for a couple of weeks? Yeah, no problem. I'll go and get a job. Walked into the job centre. And there was this job for a filing in the children's department of a television network. And I was like, here it is, my dream come true job.
And that was the ABC.
And it was the ABC.
Did that surprise you at all, that a job like that was just on offer at the job centre?
It did, but it was just filing. So do you want to hear one of the stories?
Yeah, no, this is all about your stories, Janet. We don't have a time limit here.
Okay. So I went along and you got kind of pre-interviewed by the HR department at the time, and you had to do a typing test, a good old-fashioned typing test on an old click, click, click. I couldn't type. The job specified 35 words a minute. I got 3.
Obviously, you didn't have those typing games as a kid, right? Because I remember I was playing those typing games in primary school.
No, I didn't. I mean, I knew my way about a ZX Spectrum. I didn't know my way around a typewriter at all. 3 words a minute. And the woman said to me, "Oh, you failed." And I said, "But it's a filing job. How much typing is actually involved in this?" She said, "Oh, none." I said, "Well, I do have this degree in education. I'd actually done my not my master's, but my dissertation in educational television because I loved it that much. And I said, please let me go for the interview. So she sent me up to it was in the children's department, and I got an interview. And because I'd actually had got all of this knowledge about education programs, and the ABC back then used to have a whole education syllabus that it used to run during the day. And we were a year behind England. So I had all of this knowledge about the programs that were actually coming. I managed to get this filing job. Right, so I had all of that knowledge, but I got the filing job. And the filing job was hilarious, really, because really all they wanted was the room back. They had this room, it was stacked up with all these dusty old files. They'd all been in there for 10 years. Clearly no one had touched them. Open the, top covers. They were scripts and things, nothing important. And so I sort of lugged them all down to the basement and filed them.
In quotation marks.
Filed them. That it was a 5-week contract to do this filing. 3 days later, they've got their room back.
Yeah.
And I'm there. Back now, if you came to me, Lynn, and said, after 3 days I finished my job, I'd say, okay, bye then.
Yeah.
But back then, you had a 5-week contract, right? So I was like, anyone got anything else they want me to do?
Yeah.
And the woman who was doing all the children's and education purchasing and scheduling for the children and education programs wanted to take a bit of leave. And I said, I'll do it. And I suddenly had this job where I was scheduling all of the children's programs for ABC TV.
And you had zero experience.
Zero experience, apart from my deep, deep love of television.
Yep.
So all those programs that I had watched, that I knew all about, all the teachers' notes that I'd known all about, I was able to work, and I was the assistant to the people who held the responsibility. But nevertheless, and this is quite cheeky, but the way the woman had done the job was very meticulous. She had all these bits of paper and she stuck them with sellotape onto this huge, big kind of physical thing. And this is quite a long way back, but with early days of computers really in the workplace. And my uncle is very clever with computer programming, and I went home and I said, oh my God, I've got this job, this is amazing. And he said, well, what are you doing? I said, bits of sellotape and things. He said, I'll write you a little program.
Wow. And
it was with a system called a WordStar, I think, and Lotus.
Yeah.
Do you remember Lotus?
Lotus, I remember Lotus.
Lotus. Yeah. And Lotus had this magic a facility where it could actually add time.
Yeah, wow.
So he wrote me this really simple little spreadsheet, so I could put the name of the program in and the duration, and out at the bottom it would spit out the running time. Yeah. And I went in the next day with this computer program that I had written.
So you had help writing it.
And they thought I was the second coming, and I did that job for 3 years.
Yeah. What's incredible about your story is it's the same thing, similar stories that other people have talked about in their backgrounds, other people on the team, is that just say yes to things and put your hand up for things.
Yeah.
And that enthusiasm and passion for television or for anything that you do will get you somewhere. Like, people can definitely sense that.
Yes.
I think that's really important.
I think it is really, really important. And the other great skill, and whether you can learn it or whether you kind of have a sense of it, is when to open your mouth and when to shut up.
Absolutely.
It's great. Put your hand up and say, I'll give that job a go. Like, I knew they were up shit creek, to put it frankly. They didn't have anyone to do that job, and that schedule had to be delivered the next day. Yeah. But then I didn't go and ask a gazillion questions about it. I went and asked, who would actually be able to answer my questions, because I don't really know how to do this job. But, quietly, in an appropriate way. And then there is, the job.
This is before
done.
Google. This is before you could
way
Google
before that.
How to do things.
It was before email. We didn't even have network computers.
Yeah, crazy stuff. So you get into the ABC. You're in this position for 3 years. Where did you move on from there, and what other things have you worked on in your illustrious career? And I'm not even sure how many years you've been here, but you can tell us.
I'm not actually sure. I know I should have had my long service medal, but I kind of ignore the fact that I should have had
It's a lot. But, you've worked on some amazing shows and amazing projects at time that you have been here at the ABC. Tell us a little bit about those projects.
Well, when I joined the ABC, which was back in 1987, it was a big organisation. I think there might have been about 3,000 people working possibly in Sydney alone. And they had, back then, the creative people working on the programs were that was what you aspired to. And they had fantastic training programs. I mean, all of these Hollywood, DOPs that win the Oscars, a lot of them got their initial training back at the ABC. We were a real institution with a proud culture of training people for the industry. And they used to run these incredible, incredible programs where you would have to apply. And I applied for the production assistants, the PA's course. And I think from around the country, there were 300 of us who applied. 15 of us got to go on a workshop, which was a 3-day workshop testing our skills. And then 6 of us got through to actually do the course. And the course was 6 weeks long and it was phenomenal. And in that 6 weeks, I got to work on news, music shows. We did a gardening OB. We did a sports OB. We did some drama. Amazing, amazing training. And out of that, you got a real sense of what kind of program you might have the best skills for, what you were most interested in. Now, I had already been in the children's department and had a very big passion for children's television. And luckily for me, there was a show that was starting up around the time, and it was called Vidiot. And because of also my teaching, which I draw on everything that I learned in that course so well. I mean, teaching is about managing people and communicating well. And, they are skills that I use every day. And so I was asked if I wanted to be the contestant coordinator on Vidiot, which meant that me and Eden, who was the presenter, travelled around Sydney auditioning kids to be contestants on this show, Vidiot. Then when they came into the studio, it was my job to look after them, make sure that they were comfortable and were going to enjoy the experience. And that was such a brilliant, brilliant show to work on. I loved every single second of it. And then the other big show that I worked on back at those days was Bananas in Pyjamas. Yeah.
I mean, who hasn't heard or watched or experienced it?
And the thing about that as well were the amazing people that worked on it. It was really very blessed to have worked with some really incredibly brilliant people who have always been so generous. I mean, I think that's the other thing about working at the ABC. There is this sense of part of your job is to help those coming up, to help with the training and the giving people opportunities. And so I was so lucky to work with people that were happy, you could come in the office and say, I've had an idea for a Bananas in Pyjamas episode. And they'd be like, okay, go and write the outline.
Yeah.
And I did. Yeah. And that was it. I was like the 23-year-old, PA. And
Did you have a sense that it was, I guess in Australia, that it was a little bit more about meritocracy rather than your background and where you came from?
Oh, that was the biggest, almost the number one reason why I wanted to stay in Australia. To have come into the ABC and just no one cared what school you went to. Like having been told back in England, you didn't go to Oxford, you didn't go to Cambridge, you'll never get into the BBC, to then come to the ABC, which is like, great, you can do this. Go and do this course. Give us, and create, create, and we will train you. And I guess that's why people laugh at me here, why I'm such a sort of, proud card-carrying member of the ABC, and I've spent so long here. It's because I have this sort of deep affection for the place and what it stands for in the hearts and minds of Australians.
But that being said, look, I came into the ABC, maybe 20 years after you, in similar experience. I came in on a graduate position where that selection process was just complete on merit. It wasn't about your background. It wasn't where you came from. It was about, do you have the right skills to fulfill this graduate program? And I've been here ever since. I've been here, this is my 8th year, I think. Maybe. I can't even remember.
What a fantastic program it was.
It was amazing.
And we got you out of that. I mean, how brilliant was that? And why don't we still have that kind of a program?
And I wish they had more, because that was the first and last time they had that graduate program in ABC Commercial. And I just think, if you can give more young people that opportunity to come in to learn, to create, and to be trusted as well, like that would be amazing. And also going back on the fact that it's not that Australia is a completely classless society. That still exists. But I think for me and yourself, we come from certain backgrounds where you, like, not that as a child, I always thought, oh, I would never make it into media because I was kind of naive and stubborn in a way that I didn't really think about it. But for a lot of people, they would think that, oh, my background deems me not suitable for this career, or
you don't have the right accent.
I don't have the right accent. I don't look like the right type of person. My parents don't know anyone in the industry. How the hell would I navigate the waters of media, right? But training programs like that offer you that in, and because you're alongside your cohorts, it's almost like school in a way, right? Everyone kind of starts at zero. You train up, you meet all these brilliant people that you work with today. Those 6 people, I think maybe not all of them, but a lot of them are still in the ABC. They're all in different positions all over the place. And I really lament that. I would love to be able to send some of the Good Game team, like there would be this fantastic training course, you should go for that. Go for that. It is, a different industry now, it's a different world. So you work on these programs. Were there certain mentors and heroes that you had at the ABC or even outside the ABC at that point in time that really inspired you to continue? Yes, I was incredibly inspired by a wonderful woman called Judith Simpson, who was my first EP. She was she'll probably listen to this, and I'm sorry, Judith, but you were firm but fair. Should we say that? Yes. Firm but fair. But she taught me a lot about sort of discipline and responsibility, and really instilled in me that the ABC has a standard that must be adhered to. That we can have fun, but there is a sort of baseline standard, the way you behave to each other and the way we behave and the way we respect our audiences. And I think that was a very valuable lesson. I then got to work with Helena Harris on Bananas in Pyjamas. She went on to create High Five. She was really, really brilliant. And then after my stint in children's, which I did love, I managed to get a job in drama. Now, that was a huge big step in another direction. And back in the day, the ABC had quite a lot of drama production, and that's where the real, that's where you went to go and be a director, which is what I thought I wanted to do back then. And there I met I got taken under the wing of really an assistant director down there called Karen Crisis. She now is one of the key brains behind Giggle and Hoot. So there's an example of someone who is still in the organisation who benefited from a lot of these training courses, and a fantastic guy called Tony Tills, who now directs incredible things. He does the big stuff. He does the huge stuff. He did Far Cry, and he's now doing Ash versus the Evil Dead and things for HBO. But so many, and like you said previously, so many big DOPs and directors who are working in Hollywood right now actually came through the ABC and those same training, courses that you guys came through on. We did, and you learn so much about every department of making a television program. Even though, as you know, Lynn, I'm actually no good at operating a camera. I should be, but I'm not. I kind of understand I do understand exactly what is needed for that. That being said, cameras were a lot harder to operate back then. Oh, you weren't allowed to touch them. Yeah. They came with the operator, and they came with the assistant camera person and often grips and all of that kind of stuff. And you did not touch them. It's not your iPhone right now. Oh, no. And they were sort of, they had their own special truck and had to be specially parked and all that stuff, which was great. But things like sound, directing, and the business side of it, running schedules, learning about what the implications of overtime mean, working with children. GP was such a hilarious program to work on, really. We used to work in stupid hours, and this whole sets down there was, a person's house with beds in it. Often we would be so exhausted, we'd just sleep in the bed. Sleep in the bed. Yeah. Good times. Yeah, good times in GP. So after GP, did you have your first child at this point in time, or was it? Yeah, so my beautiful son Thomas was a bit of a surprise. And so I was well on track for, I was going to be the next big director in drama. That was my goal.
And then I got pregnant. And drama hours are brutal. I mean, that is it. That is your entire life, especially on a quite fast turnaround show like GP. Because, we had a week of shooting and a week of pre-production, and that was it.
And a lot of episodes as well, right?
Oh, like 40 a year?
Yeah. So almost like Good Game, but like drama level.
Drama level, 1 hour a week, ensemble cast, big crew, location, studio, you name it. Learned so much, but it consumed my life. And you couldn't do it with a small child. So then, oh goodness me, this takes me right back. But I had Tom. Oh, actually, just before that, you're like this, Lynn, because I know you're a huge fan of this program.
Yes.
I had to leave GP because I was quite pregnant.
Yeah.
And so they put me in the studios, and by then I was an AD, so I was running sets and stuff. And there's one show in the studio, children, so back with my old friends, The Ferals.
The Ferals, which is an amazing show. I think I watched every episode as a kid, so that was amazing.
Yeah. That was a great show to work on. Such fun and so complicated. I just I think about it now. How we had actors, puppets, an amazing set, multiple cameras.
But such an intelligent show as well.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
Wendy Gray, she's another one of my inspirations, really, who was the creator and the executive producer on that program. Her attention to detail, her ability, she knew better than anyone else how to do their job. Like, she was amazing. Yeah, so I did The Ferals, had Tom, and then had this little 4-month-old baby, and I was like, I can't go back full-time. I have to go back part-time. So I rang up the coordinator who looked after my department at the time and said, any chance of a part-time job anywhere? She's, late line. So I was like, late line, news and current affairs. Oh, all right. All right, let me go and meet them. So I walk in, and they think I'm there to do the show. Yeah. Right? And
you just roll with it at that stage, right?
Well, here you talk about, you said earlier, sometimes you just put your hand up and have to be a little bit fearless.
Yeah.
This is live to air television. I've never done that.
Yeah.
I'm the one rolling the tapes. I've never done that. I'm working with Kerry O'Brien, who,
was even a god back then, right?
A god back then, but also, had this enormous reputation for not suffering fools.
Yes.
And he's an incredible person to work with. I mean, I'm blessed to have worked with him. But I was scared. Yeah. And I'm a new mum, so you're a little bit emotional, all this stuff. And there I am, live to air that night with Late Line. I don't know how we got through it. I can't remember. It was probably terrible.
Yeah.
But then that was but another. It's been a bit of a sort of story of my life, really. So I'm in that job for 3 weeks, and then the person who's the associate producer is like, she got offered a much better job, and suddenly they had a desperate need for an associate producer.
And you're
so
like, here you are, Janet.
My hand goes up. Yeah. So now I'm associate producer at Late Line, organising all of the satellites. Into our old format Late Line, which used to have a 7-minute one-off story, and then we would have 3 guests from around the world satellited into this studio live to air. Now, it was, really groundbreaking stuff in its day. I mean, satellite technology it existed, but to beam people in from around the world to talk about the same topic, that was really quite new at the time and very scary. And because the ABC never had much money, that I would only ever get like a 5-minute window to get all these satellites working. And I had some hilarious times on that with very famous people, very famous politicians, extremely eminent people. And I'd be like, Prime Minister, can you hear me? Yeah, put your earpiece in. Put your earpiece in. Can you hear Kerry? No, you can't hear Kerry. Okay, don't worry. Just put let me talk, it's hilarious. Yeah. Tell him to put colour bars up,
How did you find that transition between drama and fictional television to now news and the current affairs?
I thought I would hate it because I really felt like my life was much more in the sort of, going down the creative, telling stories in a fictional way, but I loved it.
Yep.
I loved it. I loved the intellectual rigour that was in Late Line and still is. Was just inspiring. Like I could my brain just expanded. And then they were also were extremely generous and extremely, like, no one on that team, if you had an idea, if you had a point to make about that story, you said it and it got included, if it was good enough. There was a very flat hierarchy, really. Everyone was so highly valued. And, we had a lot of fun. So, and towards, once they knew that I wasn't a complete loony, you could put forward story ideas.
Yeah.
So, I did a story I produced a story on There's Too Many Dead Bodies on Everest. I still love that story, where we had footage from the top of Everest shot by Tenzing Norgay's grandson.
Yeah, wow.
And every person on the program had summited Everest. That was my kind of premise. Michael Palin, Michael Palin.
Love Michael Palin, yeah.
He, I made him a cup of tea. Best cup of tea he's ever had out of Australia, he said, and I never washed that cup again. It still sits in my house.
It's in the glass cabinet now.
A very tenuous, why would Michael Palin be on Lateline, So I had to come up with this idea, and I didn't do this by myself, but we came up with this kind of premise. There's Michael Palin travels the world with a whole crew and a TV crew, and we needed a single explorer like the good old days.
Yep.
And we found this guy called an author called Redmond O'Hanlon who'd gone missing in the Congo for 3 years. And unbeknownst to us, but can sometimes happen with the magic of television, they were huge fans of each other.
Wow. Yeah.
And it just became this sort of, mutual.
It's like when your favourites come together and when fandoms come together, it's the most beautiful thing.
And they loved each other. And they'd never talked to each other before. And that was all there in this particular program, which, we kind of passed off as a late line.
But I love the fact that you mentioned the intellectual rigour. The only news I've actually experienced is my 3.5 months with News 24, which is a little bit different to Lateline. It's not as prestigious, but I definitely think the intellectual rigour that you need to be a journalist or to work in news and current affairs is unparalleled.
Yeah.
Like, you have to be top of the class. Like, everyone I was working with down there, obviously they were very young and almost straight out of uni, like me. They were so smart and like everyone was brilliant. Everyone is brilliant.
And this is back before the internet. So there is no Google.
Yeah, you had to go to a library.
You had to go to the library. We had back then a wonderful thing called the Clippings Library.
Yeah.
So say you wanted to do Dead Bodies on Everest as your story. You'd ring up the Clippings Library and say, give me everything you've got on Everest. And down would come this folder with all these clippings. And that's usually where you would start. You'd read them all and then names would start to pop up of articles and then you would hit the phone.
Yeah.
You would hit the phone and it would not be uncommon to speak to 15, 20 people. They're not going to be on the program. You're just gathering information.
Yeah.
Then you would present all of that. And remember, we did this 3, sometimes 4 nights a week. You would present all of that to, by then it was Maxine McHugh. She was phenomenal. She used to go through everything. You'd have selected your talent. You'd have talked through with them what the whole thing was going to be. She would then ring in her own time all of the guests that were going to be on the program. So she knew, I mean, she was such a hard worker. Well, they all were. But she would know, someone would give an answer and she would like, oh, okay, now I want to steer that back on track. That person said that to me, blah, 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 and that's the way I'm going to steer it. And she knew kind of, where she wanted the discussion to go and she knew how to drive it in that direction. And it was really, really inspiring to be a part of that whole process.
And obviously your experiences on Lateline have influenced, I guess, the field story segment on Good Game and how you see those segments playing out.
Very, very much so. If you look at my one-page proposal for Good Game, the very first time I ever wrote down what I thought this program could be, I think, in the top of the second paragraph, it says this program is not just about reviews. Now, I think that the game reviews are a core activity of the program. They absolutely are. But I always wanted stories from the industry, the history, the technology, the people, the brains. I mean, little was I to know that game developers have some of the best brains I've ever had a chance to talk to.
Like genius, right?
Genius.
Yep.
Genius. Not only are they completely, amazingly creative people, but they have this understanding of technology as well, which I'm not sure. I mean, I guess some of the great film directors have that. They do know how cameras and all of that works as well as actually being able to tell a great story, but game developers have got it in spades and they're not media trained. So,
they're a lot better media trained these days.
They are, unfortunately.
So before we start actually talking about how you got Good Game together, did you have Ned before that or did you have him?
No, I had Ned at Lateline. So that was gorgeous. And then I played a lot of games I managed to get a year. I had a year's maternity leave with Ned, and I played a lot of all the 64 games.
So before we get to Good Game, you had 2 kids, you were working on Late Line. I want to talk a bit about what it's like being a working mother. Because I guess I'm of an age, like I'm 30, I'm like, well, do I want a family? But how would I ever kind of combine my love of my career and my work with looking after kids? And you basically made a TV show with 2 young kids in tow. Like, that's incredible.
I did. Late Line was the perfect show to work on when I had kids. It was 3... Back in the when Tom was very little, it was only 3 nights a week. I didn't start work till 3 o'clock in the afternoon, so he was with me all day. Pop him in the childcare. My husband would pick him up at 6 o'clock and take him home and do all the horrible bedtime stuff. And I would be having these amazing intellectual conversations with the smartest people.
You're like, excellent, I don't have to deal with the babies right now.
Exactly, for 3 nights a week. Like, this was the perfect balance. But then I made the big mistake of going to Radio National Breakfast, which, from a career point of view was not a big mistake, but from a family point of view, that was very hard, starting so early in the morning. I guess, it is, there has always been a part of me that has felt that I've never done either of my things, being a mom or having a career, to the best of my ability because of the other thing. Something has always been compromised. On the plus side of it, my boys get it. They get it. They're proud of their mum. They understand that my work is a huge part of what I do, of who I am, and that it never takes priority over them, but it is important, and sometimes they just have to put up with it. And luckily for me, they're pretty well balanced and beautiful boys.
Kids are resilient.
They are, but when you drop that baby off in the childcare centre, then that really does challenge you. But I would say, do it. You find a way. You find a way.
But that's the thing. I think you talk to a lot of people, and there's no amount of planning that makes you ready for anything really in life. Life is just life, and you go with the flow, and you try and make best of what you have.
Best of what you can.
Yeah.
There's nothing more horrible than, being at work when your kid's sick and or you've had to call a babysitter or whatever. Yeah. There is a lot of compromise that goes on. But at the end of the day, I'm very glad that I've managed to somehow juggle both.
Yeah. And they're great as well. So, they're good kids. All right. So you're at Radio National.
Yeah. Well, I did 4 years at Radio National. Yeah. And then I was asked by Wendy Gray of Ferrell's fame if I could come and help her scope out she was working for the fledgling ABC2. So she was one of the people that started that. Now, ABC2 was the digital channel of the ABC back in 2006 or 2005 when it started. Not that many people even had digital televisions.
Well, I remember it actually started and I want to say 2002. Because I feel like that's when I first got we first got our digital television. It was one of the first ones. CRT, widescreen CRT, weighed about 45 kilos, but it had digital signal. Yes. And I could get ABC too.
Well, the ABC toyed with having a digital network back then. I think there was Fly TV.
There was Fly TV, yeah. I think that started first and then it became like ABC.
Well, then they pulled the plug on it. Because there wasn't enough uptake, not enough people had it, and one of the big budget cuts came through, and that seemed like the obvious one to go. So it had gone away. It started, it got on Fly TV, had gone away, and then ABC2 came back, and principally it was the spectrum was there, and they were just going to repeat or replay main ABC1 kind of content, which was what it predominantly was. But Wendy rang me. She said, we'd like to scope out the potential for getting our own news and current affairs show, but they had no real money to produce a news and current affairs show the way that it was done on Late Line and the like. So, could I come and work out a way that we could do this? So I got this sort of magical 5 weeks up in this wonderful department. It was what were they called?
New media.
Yeah. So, and I wrote this document, and at the end of it, I was like, I want to make this show, this show that I've written this document about.
And this is Good Game?
No.
This is something else.
This was a news and current affairs show called Australia Wide.
Okay, yeah.
which still exists in some form, I think. But back then, and the premise was really, well, I had young filmmakers around the place who had cameras, but was to harvest news and current affairs stories that were generated around the States but didn't get a national screening.
Yep.
Really lovely stories that we could then turn into a half an hour show. And then I did have a little amazing little segment on a Wednesday, which was another one of my little passions, which was is astronomy. And so we had Wednesday, we always had this astronomer on from out at Canberra telling us about what we should be watching in the night sky this week.
Yeah, awesome.
I know, I loved it. And because it was kind of, no one really watched it, we could do our own thing a little bit. And while I was making that, I was asked if I had any other ideas for a potential program for ABC2.
And that's where we start our story 42 minutes into the podcast.
You can cut the rest.
Well, the rest informs, what happened with Good Game, right? Because without the experience that you've had previous to that point, without the people that you met, without things that you've experienced in your own life as well, Good Game would have not formed.
I think Good Game is a culmination of all of those bits of experience. You're right when you said, that's where the field stories come from. You're absolutely right. There are some drama elements, those children's elements. Probably,
Spawn Point.
Exactly.
We'll get to Spawn Point.
We will get to Spawn Point, but yes, Spawn Point. And, you've built, this is the other good thing and my great advice, I've been so lucky to have worked with brilliant, brilliant people and maintain those friendships, that mutual respect, so that when Good Game came along and I had the opportunity to make a pilot, they gave me $1,000 to make this pilot, which was just about enough to pay the presenters a little bit of money. I was able to call on a lot of people to help me. I mean, Karen, who had by then was a fantastic drama director, she came and directed one of the segments because I actually didn't know how to do that.
So that's when you cash your chips in, right?
I didn't think it was quite,
you
quite in those
the
terms, but you can ring people and say, "Hey, I've got this idea. Can you come and help me?"
Yep.
And I was very, very lucky with the editor who was able to do that. Lovely Dennis. You remember Dennis? He shot it Dennis, for us. The pilot, and the pilot is still here, and I look at it now and I'm like, oh man. But there is also some charm in it, and it was enough to get it over the line and for them to go, go and make this show.
Yeah. So tell me a bit about the early days on Good Game. Obviously, we are a very large team right now. but back then, how many people did you have working on the show?
Four.
Yeah.
And one of them was part-time. So there was really only me, Jung, our editor, Langers, and Michael Kapowski, who was part-time. So he used to just come in for the studio bits of it. It's actually, I feel a little bit like my life has come full circle because, we made it we now make Pocket.
Yeah.
A lot of it we shot ourselves. If I could get my hands on a real camera person, if someone had some time to give me, then I would take it. But quite often we would be shooting it ourselves. And I remember, we made that first episode and we nearly killed ourselves. We were there till, 3 o'clock in the morning for, 2 weeks. And we got the first episode out and then it was like, oh, damn, we've got to make another one.
We have to do this weekly? What?
It was like, It was really quite crazy the way we did it. But we did it and, it is what it is.
And you were saying a lot of that inspiration came from you playing a lot of games, in the years prior. And I know that you were on the leaderboards for Age of Empires.
Yeah, it's probably stating it a bit strongly.
Oh, come on, you've got license to prop yourself up on this podcast.
Okay, so we have to go back, just rewind a little bit back to my Radio National days where I was working the breakfast shift. So I started work at 4:30 in the morning, finished work at midday. We'd pick the kids up at 3 from school. And I had to find something between 12 and 3 to keep me awake. And that's when I really got heavily into online gaming. And I played an awful lot of Age of Mythology and I played an awful lot of Final Fantasy, and then WoW came along and a lot of that. But I loved Age of Mythology. So I was in a clan called AU. And this is way, way back, before even the days. Ventrilo had just come in, TeamSpeak had just come in. And I didn't even think to tell anyone that I was a girl most of the time. And then suddenly you'd be on TeamSpeak and they'd go, ooh.
Yeah.
Because, there were some women, but not a lot of us playing that kind of a game back then in the RTS.
But also, I don't think there were the amount of teenagers, were there, playing those games at that point in time? Or
there seemed to be all ages, really.
Yeah, it seemed to be more
community.
of a mix, I think.
Yeah, and we were pretty well organised. Like, we had our own website and all that kind of stuff, and we knew the other international teams, and we'd turn up for training. And I loved it. I really loved it. I loved that game. Like, I loved the learning curve that it took, and that's probably some of my happiest times in gaming. That's for sure.
Yeah. So the early days of Good Game, and then. When did it come into television? Because back then it was still part of New Media, right?
Yeah, so we were part of New Media for that first series, and then at the end of it, and we didn't know that we would get a second series, really, but we got a lovely letter from the Friends of the ABC at the end of our first series, and they'd copied in the chairman, which said something along the lines of, congratulations on this fantastic program. This is reaching out to an audience that the ABC doesn't reach normally, and, well done. And that was a really great document to have because, that really, I thought, oh gosh, this might mean that we get to make a second series. Then Kapowski went off to pursue his corporate career. And so it needed to hunt around for another presenter. And that's when we did a very, very open casting call. So we just put it out on all of our forums. Want to be a presenter on Good Game, this is what you need to do. And we got, I can't remember exactly how many, but hundreds of applications. And Barjo joined us at that point. So he joined us for season 2 onwards. And then at the end of season 2, because ABC2 by then was getting some traction and more people had digital televisions, that the television division of the ABC decided to take it on. Yeah. I don't know the politics of it, but suddenly we were no longer in New Media. We were now going to be in television. And I have to thank another one of my great inspirations, a wonderful executive producer called Jenny Collins, who was down in the TV entertainment department. And she had I think she probably looked at all the product that was coming out on ABC2. And she really kind of said, Good Game should be moved into TV entertainment and we should be keeping this. And I remember she called me into her office and she said, okay, this is great. We're gonna commission it. You can do another series, but you've got to start making it properly.
Yes, you have to adhere to the ABC standards now.
That's right. You have to
not the New Media standards. You have to shoot it properly. Standards.
You have to get a proper camera, and you will need some more people. And go and get yourself a producer, and start putting a bit of effort in. Yeah.
Tell me about Barjo. Why Barjo?
Oh man. Well, even back then, Lynn, I was very keen on, obviously I was very keen on getting a woman involved, and I was very keen on getting some diversity into the program. So, broadly, when you go into looking for someone new, you kind of have, okay, in an ideal world, I would like a woman from a non-white background. And then I watched Barjo's audition tape.
How can you not say yes to that?
And how could you not say yes to that? And I don't know, he knocked my socks off straight away. Yeah. And we did audition, I think 8 people, quite a lot, and I also met Matt Lee through that process as well, who I was very keen on getting into the program. And so I was able to give Barjo the presenter job and give Matt a producer's job, because I had these extra producing jobs as well. So that was a huge thing as well. Matt was a big fan of esport and a wonderful addition to the team. So, yeah. So then Barjo came in and, he really shook things up.
As he does everywhere he goes. I think you've mentioned in the past that even when you first started, Good Game was getting downloaded more than any other show on the ABC.
It was. I actually kept it for ages, the little bit of paper, which I can't find at the moment, which I'll have to go through all of my records. But it was, that even that first week, I think we were on air, and Chaser were on air too. And not all programs at the ABC, but some programs were offering as a download. And we were one of them, and Chaser was one of them. And we got downloaded like 17,000 times that week or something like that. And they got downloaded 12,000 times. Or, it was to the point where there must be a mistake made, or I think someone even said, "Oh, you've just been organising your audience to
yeah, or you've just been like pinging your own links,
over and over again because you tech people, you know how to kind of cheat the system."
We've written a batch file that.
With multiple downloads. No, get into that. But
your uncle, right?
The other great indicator was the forums, that we had back then. And anyone listening to the podcast who was watching the show back then will remember them. They were extremely active, the most active forums on the whole of the ABC.
Yeah, they were like insanely active. And that was a time before really Facebook and Twitter took off. And so most, if you're a fan of something, you would head to a website or a message board or something, and that's where you would hang out. And Good Game just had the message board was insane.
It was insane. And brilliant as well.
Yeah.
And, some of those people I still talk to today that, we got to know through the message boards. It was great. They were great days. Really.
Yeah. Talk a little bit about, was it Lux and Ray?
Lux, yes. So
and their involvement, I guess, in the field stories, which, as we've mentioned, was a big part of what you envisioned Good Game to be, is not just game reviews, but stories on the culture and the industry of gaming.
Yeah. So when we got it taken into television and we got this sort of big injection of resources, so it meant... Because it was just a time thing, it was very difficult for us to get out of the studio and go and do any field stories. We did some, and we did go to E3 and all of that kind of stuff. But so this injection of funds came in, and at that point I could go and get a reporter. And obviously at that point I wanted to get a woman or find a woman who could be able to be a fantastic field reporter for us. And Lux Sheridan we'd done a couple of radio interviews together. She was based in Melbourne. We'd never actually met, but she was a psychologist and she was really into gaming and brilliant person and amazingly erudite. And I remember sort of saying, would you be interested in this? And and she was like, oh yeah, I'll give it a go. And yeah, she was really awesome. She was awesome. We still had some limitations in that she was in Melbourne, and that made it difficult. So she wasn't, as integral to the team as we would like her to have been. But yeah, I really love working with her. And then similar kind of thing with Tracy Ray. I actually met Tracy at a gaming function. She was really into the space and knew a lot about games, and I was like, fantastic, come in. Let's pop you in front of a camera, see how you go. And yeah, what a great find she was as well.
She's doing amazingly in the world of print, right?
Yeah,
I'm hitting it big time.
Very proud of her.
Yeah. So Good Game keeps expanding, the audience keeps expanding, and it's definitely a show that hits an audience that ABC is very keen to capture. And then we hit 2009. Obviously a lot has been written, a lot has been spoken about this event online and in the online sphere since 2009. Can you give us maybe just a short rundown of what happened from your perspective? And obviously you weren't privy to everything that happened in certain rooms, and we can only talk about, I guess, your perspective from that time.
Yeah.
What happened?
Okay. Are we talking about Jung, or are we talking? Yeah. We are, aren't we?
Was there another thing that happened in 2009?
Oh, lots happened in 2009.
Did I miss something? So basically, Jung's, like how he left the show.
Yeah. So it's interesting because it goes back a long way, and it goes really back to sort of all the way through 2009.
Yeah.
And really, in my mind anyway, a lot of it was to do with Spawn Point coming. And so we knew probably mid-2009 that ABC3 was going to be launched, a new channel just for children. And I had been wanting to make a show especially for young gamers featuring G and PG rated games for a long time. Wrote the proposal, yes, but they were still a long lead time. So I think in about April of 2009, I started the look for a presenter. Now, there were a couple of things. One, I had, two male presenters, and I didn't, and I don't think I'm unfair in saying this, but I don't think that, Jeremy's or Jung's great experience with games was not particularly in the children's area.
Yeah.
And I really wanted to bring a woman into the on-air presenting faces, and specifically for Spawn Point. So simultaneously to us doing that, ABC3 had done a launch for Me on 3, and Steph had put in an application for that, and had also come and had a chat to me way back, so this is in April of that year.
Yeah.
And I fell in love with her instantly. I felt like I have found my person. But I couldn't offer her the job at that point because we were too far away from being commissioned. We weren't commissioned.
Yeah.
There was no guarantee that it was
and
actually
obviously she had put her application into the Me on 3 thing, which is a little bit separate.
Which is very separate. Yeah. But they had, 3,000 applications or whatever. So I'm like, sorry. So then she rings me. Oh, I've got down to the last 50. Oh, great. Good luck.
Yeah.
So then she rings me again. Oh, I've got down to the last 20. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Good luck. Still then.
Yeah.
Then she's like down to the last 8.
Yeah.
So at this point, I'm like, we have to contract this person.
Yeah.
We are going to lose her. She's going to be offered a job by then, and we're not going to have offered her anything, and I don't want to lose her.
Yeah.
So that was always going to happen. So that kind of contention that, Steph was going to replace Jeremy, that was not part of the equation at all. Steph was just going to come and join the team. That was, in my mind, one of the kind of key things that kind of never really got understood about that time. And then, it's just, I think there were things that were happening behind the scenes, ongoing kind of issues that were trying to be addressed, and we hoped that we were being able to address them. And then it kind of all exploded. And I think also now people kind of think that this all happened in one day. It didn't. It happened over probably about 3 to 4 weeks.
Yeah.
And so, what happened one day directly led into what happened to the next day. But the end result, as far as the viewers were concerned, was that Jung had been, dismissed off the program without any kind of warning and certainly in my mind, that isn't the case. That's not what happened.
Yeah. And obviously at that point in time, you weren't really privy to, say, his meetings with higher management or anything, and there were obviously things going on in that way, and the show itself couldn't really say anything about it.
No, the show couldn't say anything. We were very... I don't think it was handled well at all by the ABC. I think they didn't understand online audiences and the ability for people to communicate and share views.
Yeah.
They hadn't really kind of had any experience
how strong
of that.
fandom is, right?
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if the boards are still up there, but that was the greatest shitstorm of all time on any online level for probably a long time.
Yeah, probably
at least in this country, right? Like that was massive.
It was massive, and the sort of the corporate affairs, the people who put out the public faces, they just didn't kind of get it.
Yeah,
and we wanted to be very, because we had always been so open and honest with our audience. We prided ourselves on being the show without a screen between us. We were gamers. We played games with these people every night.
Yeah, and you had this open dialogue with the audience, and then suddenly, boom, you couldn't say anything.
Suddenly we were restricted with what we wanted to say, to the point where I would often, I would sit here till really late at night. If people had sent an email and they had their phone number, I'd ring them.
Yeah.
Like anyone who's around back then will remember me sitting in my office and I would just ring people and I'd say, look, here's from my side of things. And, I have such, I have deep pain over that whole episode because, principally because, Jeremy was a great friend of mine as well.
Yeah, personally, you guys were in it from the start,
from the
really.
Beginning.
Yeah.
And, he is one of the best games analysts that I've ever had the great pleasure to work with. And I still felt that we could have worked through a lot of the things and he could have still been a part of the team. He, some of the things that happened that I wasn't a part of kind of meant that he just couldn't pursue that. Yeah. And which I guess is another great lesson I'd like to say for anyone who's kind of finds himself in a difficult position like that is, it is, I believe, I'm sure Jeremy would say, you compromised yourself, but it does help maybe not burning bridges, because time can heal a lot of things. People can change. Yeah. But once you've burnt those bridges, they're burnt. It's very difficult to come back. And it, it was such a terrible time, mainly for the pain, my personal pain, the pain for my friends, the pain for the team, but also the pain for the audience. Yeah. And not being able to sort of help them understand the process.
Or explain the process that they could understand, right?
Understand why this had happened. And then, of course, in all of this, completely blameless, nothing to do with her whatsoever, is Steph. Yeah. And the original plan was that Steph would join us in 2010 to be a part of Spawn Point. For Spawn Point. And that, everyone would be there in 2010. And that she would be announced and we would go through this, grand, the normal thing that happens. And then, Jung went off on some leave and took some holiday, and suddenly it was like, wow, you're on air in the middle of this, which can only be described as a shitstorm, right? Yeah, yeah. And I have so much, pride and admiration for how she handled herself in all of that.
Because that, for people who didn't experience it, that was Gamergator level, even possibly worse than Gamergator level in a way of vitriol.
What made it
so
worse
personal.
was it was personal, but it was also, we knew our audience. Yeah. it was so personal because
you've gamed with these people, right?
I love this audience. Like, these are our people. And they felt that maybe we had done some terrible injustice to them as well. And, oh man, that was so hard. And then, of course, Steph had to step in this with this kind of perception that, he had been replaced by her, which had never, ever, ever been the intention.
And the issue is that no matter how we explain it, even now, you occasionally you might get a couple voices out from the woodwork. Even now when we try to explain things like that, and obviously, if those people actually listen to this podcast, they still have a sense that it was the big bad ABC and that we had, total intention and knowledge that this would happen. But how as a showrunner could you ever want this to happen to your show at any level? Why would you do it? Why would you put yourself through the pain, or your team members or anyone through that amount of pain, right?
Why would you deliberately try and destroy the show that you love so much?
Yeah. It just doesn't make sense.
And, our jobs are to make people look good. That is my job, and, we did it well. But, Steph, oh, gosh, it was... They were very, very, very difficult weeks. I think it was probably good that it was at the very end of that production year. Yeah. And we managed to sort of, stagger our way through it. And then we had the big break and we could come back in 2010 with Spawn Point. Oh, actually, Spawn Point was about a month later than the big show. But I know I was, for the first time, worried that would people come back? Yeah.
Do you think a situation like that ended up solidifying the rest of the team after everyone came back in 2010?
I think I refocused so much on the fact that, this is not going to destroy this program. This program is bigger than this. We are here to talk about video games. Video games are worthy of serious analysis. This show belongs on the ABC. We're going to have a lot of fun doing it. We can survive this. And the way we're going to do it is head down, bum up, and just make the show. And we're going to make the best show we can. And so for me, and you've got to remember, poor Steph, presenting a new TV show is just about the most challenging thing I think anyone could possibly do, let alone to have all of this stuff happening too. So I really focused on her and Bajo and just let's get the content the very, very, very best that it can be. Yeah. And that's what we did. And I just had to hold on to that with the confidence that, we may lose some viewers who will never come back. But we will also, those people that really still like the show would stick with us, and that we might, you never know, get some new audience as well.
Could you see that reflected in the ratings at that time?
Not really.
Yeah.
Actually, the ratings, you know what they say?
What?
The last bit of Scandal is great for ratings.
Exactly.
So,
everyone tunes in.
Yeah, the ratings actually didn't dip at all, which was... I don't know what to say about that.
Which is when you think about it, I mean, a lot of these things, even, Gamergate or whatever controversy comes up, it's that very vocal minority that makes it very, very painful for everyone else. But in terms of the majority, they're there for the content, right?
Yeah. Yes. I mean, I was just hoping people will tune back in and have a go, and then they will see that we haven't, one of the big accusations at the time was that we're going to dumb it down, that we were going to go, we didn't want to appeal to gamers anymore. We wanted to be an entertainment show and we were just, and it was like, no, never. We were never asked to do that. No. Let's prove that. And the only way we can't say it, we have to show it.
Yeah.
And so, we really went hard on really trying to deliver, the fantastic content. And, it steadily won them over. And then Spawn Point came along.
I mean, let's talk Spawn Point, right?
Yeah.
Because I know how proud you are of Spawn Point.
I am.
And the fact that it really is a reflection on your love for kids programming, right? Or children's television that you've had since you were young.
Yeah, I have always loved children's television and children's literature, from even my teaching days. But, Spawn Point to me it's just the kind of the central heartbeat of everything, the kids, 95% of Australian kids call themselves gamers.
Yeah.
I want every Australian kid to be able to play a good game.
Yeah.
And I want to be able to help those kids understand the games and the techniques that are in the games that make them so compelling. Steer them. Spawn Point is unashamedly joyous, right?
Yeah,
Steer them in the right direction. Don't waste time playing bad games. When Nana wants to buy you a game for Christmas, ask for this one.
Yeah.
This is going to be a good game and you're going to enjoy it.
Yeah.
And also to give them the arguments to their parents or their grown-ups that this is why it's okay for me to game because, there is this perception that, any kind of screen-based activity is bad for children.
Yeah.
I don't think that at all. I'm a bit of an evangelist for the benefits of gaming in a well-rounded childhood, but that gaming is actually can be a very positive experience for most children and for some children an incredibly positive experience. I'm intensely proud of Spawn Point.
I mean, what's great about Spawn Point is it allows parents to watch it with their kids.
Yeah.
And so even when the parents don't understand that, there is this level of understanding that they do obtain from the show, and they can see the joy in their kids when they're watching it. It's like, oh, this is great. This is entertaining. We try our best to make the show informative as well and to also educate. Yeah. Like I always think that that is a huge role that we play on the show to make sure.
And not just the kids.
No,
the parents
the adults as well. Well, everyone. It's infotainment for everyone.
Yeah.
But to make sure that we do explore those field stories or, coding corner and strategy serves and actually not... Because I think a lot of kids' TV, especially nowadays, I feel like when I grew up, kids' television was a little bit more intellectual than they are right now.
Yeah.
But I feel like with Spawn Point, we still want to keep it intellectual.
Yeah.
Like, there are jokes that we put in that we know only adults would get or the kids might get if they started watching 80s films when they hit 16 or something. But that idea that you can be a geek and nerd and intellectual and that it's perfectly fine. Yeah. In fact, it's really good. If you're really smart, right? Like, we like to make fun of Darren, but he's the smartest guy in the room.
And Darren, goodness me, what a great, I love Darren. And I love the, I think we were right. When we came up with the idea for Darren, it was really because I wanted Barjo and Hex to be able to be playful and to be like a brother and sister, and to be able to approach the games the way the kids approach the games. But also we needed some mechanism to be able to talk about the history of games and to sort of have this whole knowledge thing. So we came up with the idea of this, that the robot would be the sort of receptacle of all the knowledge and Barjo and Hex would be the playful ones. And then, of course, James Coddy, who I shouldn't even talk about that, should I?
No, we should, because I think people who listen to this are not going to spoil it for everyone else. So
and they're not going to understand that
we can talk about it.
Robot isn't a real robot.
No, he is real. I like to say that I started off in Good Game on my internship as the technical advisor for Darren. You make of that as you will. But,
you were a very good technical advisor for Darren, Lin. You really were.
But do you know why I asked to be the technical advisor for Darren?
No.
It was because I desperately wanted to be in studio. And that was the main reason. Because I've always wanted to direct, and what's a better way to learn than actually be in studio than in the office? I'm not going to learn anything in the office.
No,
so
that's true.
I may as well just sit behind the robot.
What a great example with you putting your hand up, and what did that lead to?
Pretty much. And then, 3-4 years later, I've run the show.
And what a brilliant director you are of it. But, the fact that James is the intellect, shall we say, of Darren.
He is. And James is, incredibly intellectual and smart.
Oh, super
brilliant.
Smart. And one of Australia's most decorated games journalists, with a depth of knowledge that is, equal to Darren's, or maybe not equal to Darren's. So it just worked, doesn't it? But even when you look back on the first episode of that as well, you go, but that's also awesome, that all programs grow and develop.
I mean, that's the thing. If you watch the first 6 months of Spawn Point back in 2010, it's so different to even the later in that year. It's so completely different. And I think everyone working on that show was just figuring things out, figuring the tone. Yeah. I think you were still directing, obviously, back then, and we were trying to basically throw things onto the wall and seeing what things stuck.
That's right. And for Barjo and Hex, I mean, when you think about them and their ability, right, to be playful and just so funny on Spawn Point, and then also carry over into the Big Show, or, Big Show, Good Game, and carry off a really intense review. There's not many television performers that work across that kind of breadth. And that comes from their sort of complete truthfulness of that is actually who they are. And I think, Hex will tell you, one of my big direction to her was, stop acting, give me you. I want your idea, I want your ideas. And seeing them, I mean, Barjo is always funny, so
Barjo's always Barjo. I don't think he can be not Barjo.
No, I don't think he can't be. You're right. and he kind of, Spawn Point is almost like his natural home, isn't it? Where he's allowed to explore that kind of side of himself. But I mean, it did evolve, and just finding that. The way Darren can be a little bit kind of, the little banter that he has with them, and the playfulness that they have in the Ask Good Games on the phone and all of that kind of stuff, that's evolved over time. But that's another thing I love, that if Spawn Point has all these sort of internal stories which are led by the kids. Yeah. One of my favourites, of course, is French Perth. Yeah. The kid writes a letter, so-and-so, so-and-so.
We're still playing off it 4 years later.
Yeah, 4 years later, I'm from French Perth. And, what's French Perth like? Oh, it's got all these...
Yeah. My favourite part is, and I don't meet a lot of kids, but I hope to maybe, go to more events where I do meet more kids, is often I've heard from Stephen and Steph when they do meet, maybe 15, 16-year-olds, and they say, I used to watch you on Good Game Spawn Point when I was a kid. And these are, 15, 16-year-olds. And because Spawn Point's been around for this is our, I think, 7th year, I want to say, or
2010 it started.
Yeah, so
this would be 6th year.
7th? No.
No, it's 16, isn't it? Oh,
no, 10, 11, 12.
Oh, don't ask me about
maths. It's too late. It's too late in the day. Anyway, we've been around for long enough that an entire generation of kids have actually passed through it.
We're going to be a BuzzFeed next.
Well, that's what I keep saying. There will be a Spawn Point BuzzFeed list at some point in the future about kids, adults reminiscing about children's programs in their past. But I think that's so brilliant, because we're essentially, even more than Good Game Vanilla, we are essentially educating and informing and influencing a generation of kids. And I think that's brilliant, right?
It is, but the thing I find most brilliant about it, I think, is the ownership they have over it. Those emails that we get, the thousands of emails we get to Ask Spawn Point every week. That is hands down my most favourite part of the show. And I love, you know, the seriousness with which they pose these questions, and then with the silly faces on the end, and the kind of, you know, Bajo do these noises and Darren is a noob, you know, all that stuff. Once you've got a kid writing in, that's it. You know, I think of myself writing in all those times to Blue Peter.
But that's the point where the child actually starts thinking and starts analysing, you know, that information. And, you know, there's nothing more brilliant than that, I guess. The next evolution of Good Game post Spawn Point is really pocket, well played, you know, the GG Live stuff that we've done the last few years. Talk through about how you see the future of broadcasting. Obviously, you know, these programs were brought to fruition because the nature of broadcast television is changing.
Yes. Well, the nature of broadcast television is changing, and then there was the rise of the likes of YouTube. And, you know, you can just see the phenomenal uptake of traffic and people watching game information on YouTube. You know, and just looking at our own lives and the way we live our own lives, like it's quite a lot to expect people to sit down at 8:30 on a Tuesday night. You know, you be there, that's when the show's on. I mean, that's just not how we run our lives these days.
No, like we probably don't do it for most shows.
No, I mean, you know, I try. I certainly don't do it for any other show but Good Game. You know, we watch them in other forms, and we needed to respond to that. There was a couple of other things as well, like, you know, the breadth of gaming is so much wider. When you think back to 2006, and it was, you know, controlled by the big publishers, and then it came out, and, you know, you got a debug copy of a game, and then that was it, you know. But now there's, you know, the likes of Steam and mobile gaming and all of these brand new platforms that have come out, and just the, you know, the amount of games and that need coverage. We needed to address that, and also game and news. You know, we were just too late. You know, we only record the show once a week, and it goes to air the following week, and it made the news section really quite irrelevant. And so, really pushed to get a daily online-only show. And luckily for us, here we go again. You know, it's a very similar story really to Spawn Point. The iView platform was given some funding for original content just for iView, and that's how Pocket was funded. So again, you know, you write the proposal, and you know, there it is. There's this opportunity that has manifested itself in the ABC. Let us create some content for you. And because we had a great history of just delivering, you know, like we just meet we're on budget.
We just make stuff.
Yeah, we just make stuff, and we deliver it on time with minimal fuss.
Yeah, and under budget as well, usually. Usually. What's the thing that you're most proud of in the last 10 years of Good Game?
I am most proud of the way that the shows have kept their relevance with the audience, and I'm most proud of the team. You know, like seeing you from there you were being Darren's technical advisor to now, you know, running Spawn Point. You know, that brings me a great sense of pride. Sitting in the audience at Good Game Live with 1,500 other people, just hearing them go off and thinking, OMG, you know, like that's incredible. You know, having the ABC support and fund something which was just a little, you know, kernel of an idea back in 2006, and just seeing what it's grown into now, and the sort of attention and love that all aspects of our sort of Good Game family get from the team, you know, that gives me a great sense of pride and huge amount of satisfaction. And the audience, you know, like at the end of the day, if you're not relevant to your audience, you might as well pack up and go home. Yeah. And so that's why I love to stand next to Bajo and Hex in the signing queue. You know, people are waiting, and that's when I get to have a chance to have a real conversation with people. And you'll see me, you know, I'm just boom, 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 hello. Yeah. You know, do you watch the show? What do you like? What do you not like? You know, and seeing the number of women in that queue grow and grow and grow over the years, that's fantastic as well. And then the other side, if you can indulge me just for one more, I'm not sure how many of these I'm allowed to have, Lynn.
You're allowed to have as many as you want.
I think it's the industry, and particularly the developers. Like, you know, I've had the great opportunity to spend significant time with, you know, some of my great heroes. I like even kidnapped Gabe Newell.
You did?
On one occasion.
Yeah, he
took him to my
kidnapped
house.
to your house, yeah.
Fed him chocolate chip cookies and orange juice. That was fabulous. I mean, that the month that I got to spend with Media Molecule, becoming, great friends with them, and particularly Siobhan. It's just the industry that keeps on giving.
Even in my this is my 6th year with Good Game now, like the changes in the industry have been extraordinary. Like I remember coming in full time in 2011 and, looking for stories to produce field segments on, and being unable to find successful developers or many female developers, and just really, really struggling to find, because back then I think all the major AA, AAA companies basically closed shop, and these developers were just doing kind of not much at that point in time. This is before the indie revolution, really. And now, post GDC, especially, and seeing what's happening at the arcade and meeting so many incredible people, there is such a resurgence in the Australian,
and it's brilliant, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
It's brilliant. And it just shows you what just a little bit of funding and a motivation from, particularly looking at Victoria now.
I think so. Leadership, right?
Leadership, but and sort of, the government, they've gone, we want to be Creative Victoria. Yeah. We are going to fund this stuff. We're going to help. We're going to state it loudly and clearly. We want you to come. We want you to make games. We're going to help you do it. And what a kind of sense of energy that has brought to Melbourne. Yeah. Tony Reid down there, the Games Developers Association. It's just phenomenal, the amount of work that he's doing. And it makes us so proud, doesn't it? Because there was definitely a time where I remember saying, we can't do field stories because everyone's overseas.
Yeah, absolutely.
And E3 is so important because that's when we get to meet the developers. Yeah. And now we have them at home.
Yeah. It's incredible. I think it's so cool. You talking about leadership, you have a certain knack for picking the right people to be on the team. What's your management philosophy? And obviously, you've developed your leadership skills through your entire career. But what is your management philosophy?
I guess I'm not a huge micromanager. I like to know what's going on. I like being involved, but I like being involved when I'm asked to be involved, So I love it, Lynn, when you come in and you've got your story pretty much planned and you just want to talk it over and just get the sort of final tick off. And, I might, if I'm lucky, get to suggest one. Normally you've thought of everything, but, if I'm lucky, I get to suggest one or two things and off you go. It's great. And then I know what the story is going to be, and then I see it happen. Like, your GTC program, a perfect example of that. Like, you had laid out as much as possible. You didn't know exactly what you were going to find over there. But your sense of tone, you had that ready in your head before you went over there, and then you came back and you delivered it. That was amazing. I think I try to protect the team from all the crap that is in my job, all the stuff that I have to do as the executive producer,
which is not easy. Like it is not easy being boss. Like I think people who haven't been in managerial positions and who haven't had to deal with resource or personnel management or even higher level stuff, like it is not an easy job. Like sometimes you want to just sequester yourself away and actually do something creative.
I do. And I know sometimes I'm like, okay, I have to do the commissioning document. This is a yearly thing you have to go through, like enormous amount of paperwork. It has to be done very thoroughly.
Yeah.
These are the documents that then, get sent up to the grown-ups at the ABC, and then you get the big stamp, yes, we want you to make this show next year. And, they're really hard documents to do. And, I just have to sometimes just take myself away and do it and, reward myself with a bit of a gaming session when I've done it. And just the other sort of, the nitty gritty, the boring things that take away from the creative process. The more of those I can keep away from the team, the better. And then I guess just trying to manage sort of expectations. That's a hard one.
Yeah.
Because everyone at Good Game is so damn talented and so clever, and everyone deserves a chance. But it's very difficult for everyone to be given a fantastic new opportunity every year. Like, and sometimes stuff just has to be done. And just making sure that that's all kind of, managed and that people are happy, making sure no one gets too exhausted, no one takes on too much, because you all take on too much. Yeah.
I mean, the thing that I love most is, I think, my team members would agree with me, is just the creative freedom that we have on the show. And I think that happens very rarely on any show in this country at this level.
Well, that comes back to picking the right people in the first place.
Yeah.
That is, if you trust your team, then you trust them to be creative. Like, that's it. And that is when they're doing their best work. I can't be the holder of all the great ideas that will ever work on Good Game.
Yeah.
Like that, it's just not right. If I'm lucky, I might have one good idea. It's like a hive mind. We need to mine those brilliant brains out there, and the more I can liberate you to be as creative as you possibly can be, the better I'm doing my job, in my opinion.
Yeah, and you're doing a fantastic job. Are there any major regrets other than the 2009 episode that we have? Are there any? Would you have done anything else differently in the last 10 years?
Probably would have stamped my foot down a bit harder about moving into our cave where we have no natural light, because I do think there is a long-term impact on all of us about that. Would I have done anything differently?
You're allowed to say no.
It's hard. It's hard. Probably should have given up E3 sooner than I did.
But it's hard, isn't it?
Yes.
That's right. Ben forgives you.
I know. It's heartbreaking. No, I've got to go. I remember, actually, this is when I was series producer and I had an EP above me, and I went in and I said, I really think it's time that someone else went. And the advice was, oh, no, it's a lot of money and it really needs an EP over there, and so you need to go. And I came back, I said, oh, I'm really sorry, but I'm going to have to go.
I just had one thing, actually. I'm not sure if you've read the Game Changers book by Lena.
It's sitting here.
It's sitting there. Okay. Here. Lena and Daniel would be glad to know that it's sitting there and you're ready to read it. There was an interesting point in the back half of that book which said something along the lines of, if all the games media came out the minute or the moment that it blew up and actually just stamped down on it and just said, no, we are not for this. This is, this is not what we stand for in the gaming environment. Yeah. That potentially that could have been, where it was stopped, Potentially. And we wrestled with that at the time. Yeah. Now, that started before Pocket. Yes. Yeah. So and that is actually one of the fundamental reasons, another reason why we really had to get Pocket happening. Yeah. Because we were hampered by our ability to cover Gamergate at the time as it was evolving. It was a similar kind of thing. Evolving like every 2 days. We didn't even know what it was.
No. Yeah. So we tried. We actually recorded a couple of segments, and then by the time the show got to go to air the following week, they were out of date. Yeah. And that was extremely frustrating. It is interesting. I mean, I've actually been dealing today with, some editorial issues about some Gamergate related things, and it is a really interesting intellectual exercise to go through. Like, where do we stand on something like that? And I've had some big discussions with Ed Poles about it, and they kind of came back with that Good Game is a variety of programs across the board. Yeah. And we are much more in the kind of media watch side of things than we are in, say, the 7:30 report. That Pocket, and particularly Nick, is allowed to have an opinion. That is something that is, he's established. Yeah. It happens in every episode. Yeah. If you are a viewer of Pocket, you know that you are going to get hit with his opinion on, it might be a game or it might be a Gamergate-related thing, and that we are allowed to do that. So, I mean, I'm glad that we now have the ability to turn around an opinion much, much quicker. Yeah. But what was interesting was that, when the mainstream media got a hold of Gamergate, by that point in time, it was probably 8 months in or something, and they just dismissed it really fast. They just went, what is this? Oh, I think we probably should go cover the Syrian war instead of what's going on here. But whereas in the games media, because you're essentially dealing with an aspect of your audience as well, and again, that fear of, is that audience going to come back if you offend them, or if you don't take their
opinion seriously, but it's that kind of, dilemma that you face as a show that has, a very like certain audience.
I guess. Though, do you remember at the time we were very frustrated by our inability to be able to deliver something that felt timely.
Yeah.
We wanted to say, we were talking about it every single day. We had things we wanted to say. We just didn't have the mechanism to do it. And
to do it well.
To do it properly. And so it was, in retrospect, your story that you did sometime afterwards.
Yeah, the women in gaming story.
The women in gaming stories where, we could offer a bit of reflection.
Well, we actually held off on that for a little bit.
Well, we deliberately decided to go for a bit of reflection, didn't we?
Yeah.
To try and... Because, when something's in a sort of turmoil, you're not actually sure what are going to be the key strands that are going to stick and that you are going to then be able to analyse and what the ramifications of those are. So I think we were right to do that for that story. But I'm now very glad that should anything like that happen, and I pray that it doesn't, that we have pocket and that we will be able to react.
Yeah. We'll just all be in pocket.
We will.
Well, we are these days. If you weren't in your position right now, if you didn't go into television, what would you have gone into?
Oh, gosh. Well, had I been forced to go back to England... I would have gone into teaching because I did like it. So I'd probably be some, headmistress of some in a London,
Yeah, I could definitely see that. I think that'd be amazing. They could probably, like Channel 4 would have made a documentary about your school when you're the principal of that school.
Oh, yeah. I would have had the most progressive, I would have had an A school, that's no doubt about that. And I would have, probably been extremely happy in that life as well. I know that first day when I walked through that to get that filing job in the ABC, I thought, this is it. I am living the dream. This is it.
Yeah.
And it has been it.
Yeah.
Like when I think back to that careers advisor telling me, no, forget it, Janet. And then go, well, actually, over in Australia, there's this little show. Few shows.
Well, you've built an empire now, so you can go back to your career advisor.
But the team's built an empire.
What continues to inspire you and keep you motivated?
I love all of the ideas. I love the ideas that you guys come up with, and I can see it. I'm like, right, let's get that done. How are we going to do that? And there are some big ideas sitting out there now that I really hope we can manage to get up. And then, right, how am I going to navigate that through the ABC? Outside of my life, my relatively recent discovery of I've always loved music, but being part of a creative process as far as music is concerned.
Or lead singer in a band.
Lead singer in a band. Yeah. I noticed, I've got the inverted commas up again. But that has been such a joyful thing. Like, just that process of learning a song, getting better at it, performing it. I mean, someone who's always been behind the camera and very happy behind the camera to then sort of, to have to be up there on stage and doing this. But, what fun, what great fun that is. So that's added a sort of a dimension to my life that I think has really brought me a great lot of pleasure. And so I love coming into work having had a fantastic weekend and, sharing in the joy.
Yeah. Onwards and upwards for everything. And on that note, we do have to finish. It is late, but thank you so much for joining me today, Janet.
You're welcome, Lynn. I've probably bored everyone to tears.
No, I think it's honestly one of the best podcasts, so I think people are going to love listening to your stories. Like, I always love hearing about people's entire careers. I mean, you're at a point in your career where you can look back on everything you've done.
I can.
And really reflect on everything.
And there were some big things, like, the 9/11 night. We'd just come off air late line and get this phone call, and I normally, you never want to pick up the phone because it's going to be someone saying, I didn't like the tie Tony was wearing tonight. And it was like, no, I'm in the World Trade Centre and a plane has just flown into my building.
Holy crap.
An Australian.
Wow.
Who rang the newsroom at the ABC. I mean, that person, what was their first thought? The plane's gone into their building and their first thought was, I'm going to ring the ABC and tell them it is happening because the ABC is, so important to Australians.
I mean, I'd say we're going to finish this podcast, but I do want to talk about this point is, I think both of us have an immense respect for public broadcasting and in particular what the ABC does in this country as well and how important it is and its status within this country. Exactly.
And that is an interesting thing with it, wrestling with changing audience patterns. Like I firmly believe and have always believed that I'm a content maker. We make content, we put it out there. As long as we're relevant to Australians, that's our job done. And I don't mind where they watch it, and that's an interesting debate that we have, when you think of, we may be measured on bums on seats on a Tuesday night.
Yeah.
And, okay, well, why is Good Game got 10,000 less viewers, bums on seats? Well, maybe they're watching on another platform.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to get you back on again to tell us more about working with Kerry O'Brien and the future of broadcasting. But on that note, as always, if you've got a topic you want us to chat about on Good Game Roundtable, you can tweet me at LGeology or leave a comment on Facebook or SoundCloud. Remember, you can also listen and subscribe to this podcast on iTunes. Till next time, goodbye.
Goodbye. Thanks very much, Lynn.